My name is Najah Underwood. I'll be talking about Chapter 11, the traditional leadership approaches. Now, if we go down to the first slide, one of the main points is the nature of leadership. Now, there are two components of leadership, the process and the property. One involves a non-coercive influence on a group to meet goals. And as a property, leadership sets these characteristic attributes to those who perceive such influences successfully. Now, influences shape a lot of things, such as our society, because if we didn't have any leaders, we wouldn't be as far as we are today with such laws and equal movement rights and stuff of that matter. Now, if we go down to the next slide, we're talking about the early approaches to leadership. Now, the text talks about the traits research, which are essential for behavior traits. And Michigan State and Ohio State did a study on this. Now, Michigan State had two main components to theirs, which they said was on two different ends of the spectrum for behavior traits. One, they said one was job-centered leader behavior, and the other one was employee-centered leader behavior. As Ohio said that these traits were on a continuum of like a spectrum that did not end on both sides. And they had two of these. One was a low consideration behavior and a high consideration behavior. And the other one was the low initial structure behavior and a high structural behavior. Now, if I show you in the book, here is the graph that they have for that. One ends, this one ends, this is Michigan State and Ohio. See, they have theirs on a continuum, so you could fluctuate back and forth. Now, if we go down to the next slide, we're talking about the third point that was made in this book, the emergence of situational leadership models. Now, new situational theories of leadership attempt to identify appropriate leadership styles of the bias of the situation. Now, leadership styles on a continuum was first approached by Tedium and Schmidt, and then they were the precursor for the modern situational approaches to leadership. And they had a 7-level leadership scale that they went from. It was extreme boss-centered to a subordinate-centered leadership. Now, if we go on to the next slide, the first theory that Smith and Tedium influenced was Fiddlers LPC Theory. Now, the LPC theory states that leadership effectiveness depends on the match between the leader's style, viewed as a trait of the leader, and the favorableness of the situation. Now, in a situation of favorableness, this would determine the task structure, the leader-member relationship, and the leadership position power. Now, leadership behavior is suggested to constantly reflect your personality traits. But it's not easy to change those traits, so that's why they think leadership behavior is reflected off your personality traits. The second theory that was brought up in our book is the Pascal theory of leadership. Now, this focuses on the leader behavior for various situations, or leadership behavior for various situations. Now, it is suggested that it's directive, supportive, participative, or achievement-oriented, and the behavior may be appropriate depending on the personal characteristics of the subordinate or the characteristics of the environment. But unlike LPC, this theory is presumed to be more altered towards their behavior as it best fits the situation. This is more on a personal level, as the personal characteristics that the person has, and it's whatever happens within that situation that they make the decision on that. Now, if we go down to the next slide, V-Room's decision tree approach to leadership. V-Room's decision tree approach suggests that the appropriate decision-making style is based on the situation of characteristics. Now, this first one is just telling you the situation of how they would go about it, but this is the style of which you would make a decision upon that situation characteristics. Now, V-Room decision tree approach suggests the appropriate way to decide how much a subordinate should participate in making a decision. And managers look at the situational attributes, follow the series of paths through the decision tree, and it helps them to know how to make these decisions. Now, if I show you this picture in the book, this is what the decision tree looks like. Now, the V-Room theory is broken down into 5 sections, I might say. To decide, to delegate, to consult individually, to consult in a group, and then to facilitate. And this is what they're talking about as the way to go about the way you should do your decisions. You can't really see it, but it is on page 426 if you want to see it in more detail. But that's the way that V-Room goes about it, and it's a very unrealistic way, I think, to go about it, because there's too many steps, and there's a lot of, it's a weird approach to go about something, because you have to go through all these steps to come up with something when the situation by then is probably solved. Now, I have a question to ask y'all today. And my question is, out of the 3 leadership theories, LPC theory, the Pascal theory, and V-Room's tree approach, which one seems more practical for managers to use just in an everyday basis, or at the workplace, or at wherever, just where they work at? Again, my name is Najah Underwood, and I thank y'all for watching my video.